because we need to, but because we want to show you, is inspect the flow frames. So you can see the bees doing their amazing work down the cells. They're depositing nectar with their tongues. They're drying out that honey. They're going through that amazing process to make that liquid gold. And if you have a look, some of the cells are capped and some of them aren't. What capped means is they're putting their wax capping on top of the cell to say it's ready to keep in the larder for later. Now, if you've got questions, put them in the comments below and we'll answer them live. It's all about learning, and if you've got answers to other people's questions, then chime in and help people learn. It's all about sharing the knowledge of this beautiful thing we call beekeeping. Look at that. Okay, so I'm just going to add a bit of smoke to the front of the hive because we are going to be taking the hive apart for this. We just want to calm the bees a little bit. Now I've just got my smoker going. I might even add a little bit to here. Just bear in mind that this can be hot. If you're new to beekeeping, wear your gloves, protect yourself. Okay, there we go, the smoke is going nicely. Just going to put that right in the entrance and give it a couple of squeezes like that. Now there's not much activity here this morning because it's still early here and it's winter time. Okay, I'm going to leave that smoker just right there to give a whiff of smoke as the bees return home to their hive, and that way it'll have an effect of calming. Where it's said to mask the alarm pheromone, which is the pheromone the bees do to say, hey, there's a problem, we need to attack. Now, before I get right into this hive, I better put my bee suit on. And we've got something new for you this morning, and that is a clear view hood. So this is a new innovation of ours, where instead of having mesh all the way down, we've got this nice clear view. And it kind of has the effect of thinking that you don't have a bee suit on at all, which is quite neat. I'll do that up now. Okay, just making sure you're doing your middle zip up first, then the other ones.
Sorry, Cedar, everyone's lost audio.
Oh, I was on such a good flow. Can you hear me?
It is completely gone from Cedar.
Okay, pull out the widgets and we'll just roll close. Okay, sorry about that. Give us the thumbs up if you can hear us now.
Sounds good, fellas.
Okay, good.
Audio's all out.
Yeah, okay, good. So next, you'll notice that this has a clear view. That's something new for us, which is very cool. It means you can see much more clearly without looking through that mesh. There's a little adjustment up here just to pull it back against your face a bit more so you don't get the reflection from the inside as you're working. And a bit of ventilation here to limit the fogging. But what we've done is we've put a zip all the way around the edge, which means that you can swap it out for the mesh if you want to. So you've got a choice with our bee suits now whether to have it clear or mesh. It's also a little bit handy to have an opening here just below the mesh in case you want to eat a little bit of honeycomb. Now, let's get back to our hive. You might need to come in close to here, but what we're going to do is just pop the lid open. Now, if you have a look in the side window, there's a lot of bees in here this morning and they haven't really gone out to forage yet. So that means we're expecting the hive to be a little bit more alarmed than usual. Usual mid-morning to mid-afternoon is the best time to go beekeeping, and that means half your foragers are out to play. So the next thing we're going to do is just pry the lid off with our hive tool. This is the one that comes with the suits and jackets kit. We might remove that one as well. And we're just going to lift that on the corners like this. We're using the chisel end, and away we go. We're into the hive now. We've got an excluder in place, so the queen's not going to be on the inner cover this time. And we're just going to lean that up against the hive for those bees to come home. Now today, what we're doing is inspecting the flow frames, and it's not something you need to do, regularly, because when you are doing your inspections of your hive, what you're focusing on is the brood chamber downstairs, where you're looking for signs of pests and disease. Up here, we're just checking in on the flow frames for fun and a bit of learning. Now, they're designed so you can get a good idea of how full they are from the end window. And you usually don't harvest until you see a lot of cap in here, or you see that they're all capped in the side window here. Here you can see it's not quite capped at this end. There's a bit missing in the middle as well. So you're learning about what's going on in your hive by using the windows, and usually that's quite adequate to tell when to harvest. But a nice idea is to learn by having a look at what the windows mean, but also what is actually going on in the hive once you pull it apart. And that just helps you know when to harvest. As said earlier, put your questions in the comments below and we'll answer them as we go. I'm going to add a little bit of smoke here because I noticed they were starting to get a bit defensive. So I'm also tuning in with the bees to know whether I should be putting my gloves on or not. Now, if you're new to beekeeping, do put your gloves on, look after yourself, make it a more enjoyable learning journey than getting lots of stings straight away. Okay, so to remove a frame from the hive, what we're going to do is lift. There's a lift point under here, there's a lift point at the back, and there's also one at the very bottom. So I'll just show you those lift points now. One is the chisel goes right under the front like that, and what you're doing is just levering the frame up. So that's one. The other one is under here. You can get your hive tool and you can also lift there. But the one to start with is this end here, because the J tool goes right under there and gives you plenty of leverage to lift that up like that. Once you've loosened that, come back to this lift point and you should be able to lift that up okay. Then I can put my fingers there on the one end and slowly lift that flow frame up. And let's have a look at what is going on inside this flow frame. So that's looking pretty good. There was a bit of burr comb, so we've ripped a bit of honey. Burr comb is where they put their wax and honeycomb adjoining between one frame and another. So that's unusual with the flow frames. They usually behave and don't do that, but sometimes, depending on your bees, you can get a bit of adjoining comb. So what I'm going to do with my hive tool is just cut that away, so hopefully next time that won't bother joining one frame to the next. So looking at this, we've got a nice full frame of honey. So that's fantastic news. It's nice and full in the middle. It's almost full at the ends. It's pretty well ready to harvest this one. And I'm looking at the neighbouring frames. They're also ready to harvest as well, which is great news. It's not far away for them to be filling the remaining cells, and then most of these frames will be ready to go. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Have we got any questions coming in?
Yeah, we do, Cedar, and we've just got a bit of wind going on, but I think it sounds pretty good. Cedar, just wondering if you've just got a medium-sized backyard, is that okay to have a flow hive in?
Look, it is. There's people keeping bees on rooftops, in backyards, in urban areas, out on farms, on balconies in cities, all sorts of things. So the great thing is it's a very small footprint to be able to get a real amount of produce and to be able to really have your own little farm here, and to be able to fill up those honey jars. So the great news is yes, you can. There are some places, not very many, that have some restrictions on beekeeping, but usually you can go ahead and have a number of hives in your backyard. So yeah, it's a wonderful thing. Of course, you need to pay attention to not positioning your hives where it might annoy others. For instance, their entrance is where the bees fly in and out, so you've got to be careful of if that's a walkway, for instance, right in front of your hive there, that you're not increasing the likelihood of stings for people passing by or your neighbours, etc. Always a good idea to go to your neighbours with a jar of honey, and it should keep everything sweet.
Absolutely. Cedar, Shannon's asking, they had a lot of capping in the front window of their flow frames when they checked, and the cells were half full. Then obviously it's been less when they've gone back to check it. Do they eat the honey or restore it somewhere else in the hive?
Yes, bees are constantly moving around honey. If you look at this end window view here, then you'll actually see this pattern change throughout the day. And when they get on the flow, it's quite exciting. You'll actually see them splashing nectar around all of these cells like little droplets. And by the afternoon, it'll either be disappeared because they've used that area to dry it out, and then they've moved that nectar further in to fill up some other cells that are almost full, or perhaps they've just condensed it down from being a whole lot of distributed nectar to a number of cells that are filling. And they keep doing that till they've filled the entire frame, and then from there they go on and continue filling to the extremities, and then they put their cap on, which is their wax capping, to say that the honey is ready, and that way it seals it at that moisture content. And there you have it, a beautiful flow frame full of honey.
Cedar, we'll just get you to raise your voice a little bit. People are just
Okay,
having trouble hearing.
I'll try. We've got a bit of audio problems today. Our widgets haven't worked, so I have to yell to a phone that's filming me.
And you're going through the new mask as well, Cedar.
That's right.
People are asking about the new veil.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about this earlier. So this is something new for us, and yes, to answer your questions, it is a retrofit. You can add it to your existing flow bee suit. The idea is you've got a lot clearer view, which means that you're not looking through the mesh. Often you're looking through the mesh and you just want to get it away from your eyes eventually because it's playing with your eyes a bit. Now, the clear view helps by not having that mesh right in the way, and it also helps by sometimes you can get a sting on your nose through the mesh, whereas bees can't sting through this. So a couple of little advantages there. But if you don't like the clear view, both options are with our bee suits, and simply there's a zip out piece and you can go back to the mesh. So play around, see which one you like, and let us know your feedback.
Great. Cedar, what question coming in? How do you know when to add the flow frames to your brood box?
Okay, great question. So to add flow frames to a brood box, it's always good to wait till the brood box, which is the one down here, is full of bees and they've drawn out all the comb. So you want all the comb completed. You want a functioning colony busy with bees before you add the super, and that's a super of any kind, whether it be a flow super or a conventional one. Okay, I'm just going to add a little bit of smoke to my hands and into the hive. The reason why I'm doing that is I noticed a couple of bees were just starting to get a bit more territorial. After all, I am pulling apart their home.
See, that's a good question's come in on this actually. Does the honey then start tasting like smoky?
It does. So if it's capped like this, it won't. But if you've got a whole lot of uncapped honey and you're using the smoker, it does get quite a smoky flavour. So something to be aware of when you're pouring smoke into your hive.
We've got a young new beekeeper, Rami, 12 years old, lives in Sydney, and wondering, Cedar, do you think that they could look after a flow hive?
It's a wonderful thing for young and old. We find that when a family starts beekeeping, everybody gets into it, and it becomes this fascinating topic. And the more you learn about bees, the more you realise there is to learn. So I think it's always good to get help though. So in the beginning, as you're learning, get some help from local beekeepers, and that will really make the learning curve a lot easier. Unless you're the type that really likes to jump into things and get going without the help. But if that's the case, you should do lots of learning online with our online training videos and watch things like this Facebook Live. If you go to thebeekeeper.org, we've got a course there which has experts from all over the world contributing to, and it's also a fundraiser. And that can be a wonderful way to learn quickly. But yeah, assuming you're at home with your parents, so perhaps you want their buy-in, get a beehive and get going, and they can help you with it.
Great, Cedar. Trisha's asking, when the soup is getting really full of honey, how hard is it to remove it to do an inspection of the brood box?
Okay, that's a great question. If it's a bit heavy to remove, and you'll see us, if you dial back a few videos, we'll be removing the super to inspect. If it is a bit heavy, then just get some help as you lift that off. You don't want to strain your back, and they can be quite heavy when they're full of honey, because if you think about it here, we've got 3, 6, 9, we've got about 18 kilograms of honey here in this box, plus the weight of the box and the frames itself. So you do need to, depends how strong you are. If you're strong and it's full of honey, you can do it. If you're a bit concerned, then do get some help just to lift that off.
Jason is in the USA, Louisiana. I'm just getting huge amounts of rain at the moment, and just wondering, obviously it sort of slows down production for the bees. Is there anything else excessive rain may cause?
Okay, so rain can cause, I guess, some issues. If you've got your hive in a shady area and it's very wet time of year, then you can get into the issue where pathogens like chalk brood can become more prevalent in your hives, and one of the fixes for that is moving your hive into a more sunny location and just try and get it out of the damp. But otherwise, we get a lot of rain here as well at times, and bees are built to last through times of thick and thin, as long as they've got some honey stores. Even if it's raining for many months and they can't forage, then they will be able to survive on their honey stores.
Right, Kathy's asking, is spring's nearly here, must be here in Australia. I'm just thinking of doing a split. What would be the easiest method with a flow hive?
So split with a flow hive, the easiest method is what's called a walkaway split, where you don't buy any new queen, you just let them raise a new one. And the reason why it's easier is because you don't need to find the queen in the hive, which takes some learning and some skills to be able to find the queen easily in amongst 50,000 bees. So if you type in walkaway split or hive split into our YouTube channel or our Facebook video resources, or if you go to thebeekeeper.org, you'll be able to find videos showing you how to do the walkaway split, which is basically involves taking some frames out of the bottom box and putting them into another box, and you just need to make sure both hives have eggs in the bottom of the cells, and from that they will usually raise another queen in the hive that doesn't have one. And you can just take out half of the frames in here, replace with fresh new ones, put them into a box beside it with fresh new ones, and they should go ahead and make a new queen. There's a little bit more to it, so do watch those videos and that will show you how to do it.
Cedar, can you use the flow hive with thicker consistency honey like Manuka or jellybush?
So jellybush or Manuka honey from New Zealand has a property called thixotropic, which is a really interesting property. You can put it in a jar and stir it, right? And when you stir it, it becomes liquid, and when you leave it for a bit, it sets like jelly. And those thixotropic honeys, if you get 100% thixotropic honey in your flow frame, then it probably won't flow out, right? But if you get a mixture, then you'll often see us harvesting and you see globules coming out. So typically it's a mixture, unless you happen to live in an area that's got an amazing flow of those medicinal honeys. So typically what beekeepers do, if they've got thixotropic honey in a conventional hive, they also can't spin it out very easily. So no matter what hive type you've got, it's pretty hard to get it out of the frame. So what they end up doing is pricking the cells with these prickers, which does the job of kind of stirring up the honey, and then they put it in a centrifuge to spin it out, and they also do it in a hot room. So all of that's pretty advanced. If you've got a situation where you've got some of your frames that are full of that honey and it won't come out, then you can just leave it for your bees, and next time they'll replace that honey with something else, and away they go again. Usually the process of opening and closing it will actually trigger them to get in there and rebuild those cells, and next time they'll probably replace it with liquid honey. It's not a problem we hear that much of, certainly because it's kind of hard to get 100% medicinal honey flow in your hive. Having said that, there are people that have reported the thixotropic honey, like the jellybush and manuka, not coming out of a number of their frames. So, as said, you can do nothing about it and replace it with liquid next time, or you can go to the trouble of trying to get that honey out by pricking them and spinning them and so on.
Right. Cedar, John's just wanting to know, should you harvest the flow frames in winter and then replace with traditional frames, or just leave the flow frames in there?
So you might want to get some local advice on that, and it depends how long your winters are and so on. Some beekeepers like to run in those colder climates with another brood box full with mainly honey, and that's their stores for the winter, and then they'll take the flow super off for the winter time. Others will remove the excluder just to allow the queen to travel with the ball of bees up into the flow frames for the winter, and they'll consume the honey in the flow frames to survive over the winter time. So it's a little bit up to you, but get advice from your local beekeepers whether you should be removing your flow supers and reducing the size of your colony for winter.
Right. Cedar, this is from Aussie Beekeeping. Is it possible to collect pollen and mix with 1-to-1 to make patties, or do you need to use pollen substitute?
Okay, I have not that much experience in pollen substitutes. It's not something I have ever needed to do in this area. Normally there's enough forage around to keep our bees happy and healthy. But if you live in an area, or you've got advice that you should be feeding supplements such as pollen patties, then you'll need to get in touch with those local suppliers, and they'll help you with information on what you should do to feed that particular pollen source to your bees. If anyone's got some great information on that, chime in on the question.
Right, Richard's asking here in Melbourne in Australia, can you recommend what to paint or protect the flow hive with? Got a flow hive just waiting, had put some linseed oil, but it's just starting to weather a bit.
Yes, okay. So if you're trying to keep it looking like natural wood outdoors, you're always going against nature a little bit. He wants to turn it back to grey, turn it back to the earth eventually. So it does take some TLC in order to keep that beautiful wooden look. Alternatively, you can paint it. If you swing the camera around, you see a nice blue painted hive mid-row there. So you can get carried away with paints and have fun painting your hive and getting it looking beautiful, and that'll be a longer lasting finish if you like. But if you come up here, you can see that with a bit of TLC you can keep the hive looking beautiful. You can see a little bit of TLC is needed on this back cover here, so you can give that a rub back with either some sandpaper or a scrubber and reapply your oil to keep it looking nice, like these panels are. There's a product called Oxygen bleach, which will help strip off mildew on wood. And once you've stripped off the mildew, you can then go and add your coat of oil again. The decking coats are made for protecting timber outdoors in the harshest of environments. So they're the ones that can keep it looking like wood. So there's all sorts of deck coats available from your local hardware store.
And Cedar, in terms of that, obviously everyone can notice in our apiary we've painted all our roofs. Is that just to make it look groovy, or is it for weather protection as well?
It's for weather protection. So basically the roof, right, it cops the most kind of harsh weather. The sun's beating down on it, the debris is landing on it, the birds are pooing on it, and it's best to paint that if you want it to maintain a good weather seal.
Sorry, I'm following the microphone. We've just got a few sound problems. Cedar, with the paint that you're using on these hives, do they have to be eco-friendly, or do you need to leave them for a few days before you actually put the bees in?
So if you've got an established colony, it's very hard to get it to move away, no matter what you put on your hive. If you are putting a brand new swarm into a box, then you need to be careful, because that might pick them off. In which case you want to just oil it with something, a solvent in it. You want to wait a few days before dropping a brand new swarm into it. So we're having a few technical difficulties today, so we're going to wrap it up. We've got time for one more question.
Oh, fantastic, Cedar. Just in terms of having backyard beekeeping, can you just have one hive, or is it better to run two? But if you haven't got the space, what do you then do?
Okay, so 2 hives is always better than 1, and 3 hives is better than 2. Simply because you can have a hive that does really well, and you can have a hive that does poorly in the season. So you want to increase your chances, increase your learning, then get multiple hives, because then you can experience the joy of watching the honey flow in, and also learn what it takes and what an amazingly healthy colony looks like, and what a colony looks like when it's struggling with it, and so on. You can also use the resources from one to create another hive, or to fix a problem where one hive's going queenless. You can get a frame out of one, put it into another with eggs on it, and they can raise their own queen and things like that. So it's always better to have more than one hive. However, if your space is limited, you'll have to think about that. Perhaps you need to put them on your roof, or find a solution to be able to run more than one. Thank you very much for all your questions, and if you want to see Beekeeping, get your learning curve really happening in a fast way, take a look at the beekeeper.org. It's also a fundraiser raising funds for habitat regeneration and protection.